We really have to knock people over the head with this reality, because if we're living in this blue-pilled world, I think that's why guys are suffering so much from mental health nowadays, is because of the fact that they're getting this messaging that I can just be myself and I can get a woman. But the reality is that if you can't get a woman and you're just being yourself, what does that say about you? That says I'm deficient in some way. And that causes depression, that causes anxiety.
Welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today, guys, we are pulling it all together, and we're talking about the different pills within the manosphere, and we're going to really break them down and talk about what really works in today's dating world. Before we get started, please remember to comment and like on this video, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So, Todd, when we're talking about the pills within the manosphere, we're really talking about ideologies, right?
Yes.
And there's three main ones. There's the black pill, there's blue, and then red.
Yes.
I feel like most people have heard about the red pill.
Yes. There's also there's people trying to create different color pills, but like there's a purple pill out there. There's like a pink pill for the women. But at this point in time, the most prevalent by far are blue, red, and black.
Okay. Blue pill kind of just says just be yourself.
This is what your parents have probably taught you. And this is kind of what the larger society has taught us as well, especially like Disney is a huge culprit of this. And it's really about just saying you're great who you are and you don't need to change. And because of that fact, you will find someone in your life that you will have a partnership with. And you know what? Sometimes you don't even have to work for it. You just have to wait. And it'll come around.
They will come to you.
Yeah, especially when you're least looking. Then they will just appear. And so that you can tell the sarcasm in my voice how much I abhor the blue pill, because I just think that kind of messaging can be really damaging to people in general, men and women.
What's interesting about that and what you just said is that I feel like I hear that messaging to a lot of women. And a lot of women will continue to portray that, even the ones that are in successful relationships. They will say, oh, I met him when I was not looking. And it's really easy for women to send that message because they kind of can a lot of times sit there and wait, right? Because, we're talking about the initial dating stages and like the initial attraction.
Yes.
And typically it is the man that is pushing that forward.
Yes.
And is, chasing after that woman, or at least pursuing her.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why a woman could be at a bus stop and a guy could come up to her and talk to her. But the reverse is not going to be true.
It's not true. So I think that's sometimes where like women will oftentimes give that same messaging to men when it's very different for men, because they're the ones that have to take more of that active role in finding a woman.
Exactly.
Or else just no one's going to find anyone.
Yes, exactly. So it's one of those things where if you hear that messaging of just be yourself and a woman will fall into your lap, then it's one of those things where that's going to dissuade you from putting real effort. And that's what it takes in 2023 to connect with somebody from a male's point of view. You have to put a lot of effort into this.
Yeah, and I think the truth is, and you can probably speak to this with your background with working with people, is that everyone can grow and everyone kind of needs that motivation to grow. So you shouldn't just sit there and think that somebody's going to accept you how you are when you're 18 and you don't grow from that mindset of when you were 18 to now you're 30-something. That would be crazy to expect that.
Yes.
So let's get into the black pill ideology.
Okay.
So this is the emphasis on looks.
Yes.
They're saying that looks matter, but with a side note of there's things that you can do to maximize your looks. So they do believe in looks maxing and kind of putting your...
Yeah, well, looks maxing is one of the key elements to that ideology, is saying that if you want to put yourself in the best position possible in today's dating market, you have to look as good as you can. But where it kind of gets dark is the fact that a lot of our looks is genetic. And so you can only go so far.
Yeah, there's many things that you cannot change.
Exactly. And so if you're a guy, for example, who is very short, like there's been studies that have done that have shown that if you're 5'4" or below as a male in the West, that only like a fraction of women will find that attractive. And so it's something where that's something that's predetermined, and you can't change that.
And I think, so overall, when we're talking about the black pill, I think that oftentimes, like, women don't react very well to hearing about it. I honestly didn't know about it until a few months ago, you know, when we had wheat waffles on the podcast. And to me, like, I understand why women don't really like the sound of it, right? Because especially for women, like, we, in the past, it has been all about our looks, it feels like, right? And so now what? We're saying that it's all about a man's looks. So we, I think, fundamentally want to disagree with that. But I think that it's only human that you are attracted to the person that you're looking at in front of you, that you're going to be potentially dating. So
Yes.
I do think that, especially in today's world, and we can dive into this, but of course with how people are meeting in today's age, looks is playing a greater role. I took an interesting poll on my Instagram a little while ago about asking men how they met their most recent significant other. And it seems to be, I'm just estimating here because it wasn't a true poll. It was just them answering. But we went through it. And I would say like at least 50%, if not more, online. They met online. They met on a dating app. Instagram, slid into the DMs. And then the other half, maybe warm environments. So, of course, with dating apps, what's different about dating apps versus warm environments is you're going on a picture and you're taking away a lot of the natural stuff that you find out about a person or you feel about a person when you meet them in person.
Yes.
And so it makes sense why, you know, looks are more important on dating apps.
Well,
what are your
I mean,
thoughts?
I don't think that there's any discussion or debate that even has to be said when it comes to dating apps or online, is that that's going to be the first thing. And so my theory is that what has happened is that women have reached equality in the West as far as schooling, as far as careers, and so on and so forth. And so for the longest period of time, women needed kind of that provisioning and protection. And now women don't need provisioning. They can make their own money. And protection, that's really not a thing anymore.
We're not getting chased by lions
We're not
anymore.
getting chased by lions or even like
Yeah.
people from other tribes and things like that. The reality is that if, you know, a woman is, and women, of course, are vulnerable, you know, to violence. But at the same time, it's one of those things where that's usually going to happen when the guy's not there anyways. Do you know what I mean? And so I think what's happened is that because women don't worry about the protection piece as much anymore, and they definitely don't worry about money as much anymore, it's one of those things where what's left over, it's going to be what men have been doing forever is the number one thing is going to be saying, am I attracted to this guy? Because I have so many options. How am I going to narrow that down? And the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to say, is this guy someone that I'm really attracted to? Because they have that option.
Well, think about it. Like even 30 or 40 years ago, let's say a really attractive guy in his 30s was still living at home broke. Like, was he really going to get many options that women, you know, were interested in him?
No.
Probably not.
I mean, I think there would be some, but comparatively to today, where if a guy just was in the exact same situation, he could definitely get in the door. Whether he'd be able to stay there or not, it's a different, different conversation. But I think because of the fact that if he ended up being one of these top guys, it's one of those things where he would have access to a lot of women. Even if he was living in his basement. I really believe that. But again, I don't think he'd be able to stay there because I think women want, and I agree with you when it comes to this, that women have a whole bunch of different boxes and you need to check all of them. And I think that would, but also hookup culture is a huge thing nowadays. I was actually talking to another guy at the gym. This was kind of interesting. He was only 19 and this guy was definitely a Chad. He didn't even know it. I asked him, did you know what red pill and black pill is? And he goes, no, what is that? I have no idea.
He doesn't have a need to know. Is that why?
But what's interesting, though, is that I asked him about his dating life, and he said, I can get any girl I want pretty much to have sex with, but I can't find any high-quality women to have relationships with because they all are involved in hookup culture. And I said, even like you and I live in a very conservative town.
We do.
And so I asked him, I said, even in our town? And he said, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's like women are like 19 having 20 bodies. That was his exact quote.
Wow.
And he said it's pervasive where he hasn't. So actually and he's an apprentice studying to be an electrician. Mm-hmm. So what my advice to him actually was go take a college course somewhere because there's more women in school than guys. And at some point, maybe he wants to open up his own shop. Mm-hmm. He could take a business course.
Yeah.
And he would have a lot of access to women who were kind of more higher, quote unquote, higher quality.
Yeah. You think that those women at a university wouldn't be participating maybe as much in hookup culture, potentially.
That's my thought.
That could be true, yeah.
But he said, like, when he goes to parties and things like that, a lot of the women there, that they have these really big body counts.
Yeah.
At a young age. And he was really discouraged by it because he's kind of more of a conservative guy and really wanted to find a girlfriend. But he said he has a difficult time finding a girlfriend.
Yeah, I believe it. I think that those groups of women are getting smaller and smaller, you know, the ones that are not participating. But I think that that's good advice. Like, he needs to get outside of that friends group that he's in right now.
Yes.
Because he won't, especially if the men and women are both participating in it. Mm-hmm. And even if he's participating in it, he's lowering his chances, I think.
Oh, of course.
Because he's spending his time and energy in it.
Yes. Well, he's told me that he doesn't do that anymore because it's something that he just felt was very shallow. Yeah. This is from a 19-year-old kid.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah, exactly. He was a really good guy. Mm-hmm. But it was something that, he was really frustrated. Mm-hmm. And this was, again, a guy who, as I asked him, had you been on the dating apps? And he said, yeah, I get like hundreds of likes. But he said, like, none of them are, like, girlfriend material. Mm-hmm. So I think that, but that's a perfect example of a guy who doesn't have any realization kind of what. So he's what I would call a blue pill Chad. Right.
It's interesting because also what I just thought about is I have a friend who, this was a couple years ago, she was messaging somebody. This happened through Facebook. He reached out to her because he seemed like he was interested in her, slid into the DMs, right? Mm-hmm. She kind of got talking to him, found out some more about him. Come to find out, like, he wasn't in the best financial situation or, like, living situation. And he was younger, though, than her. Mm-hmm. I think he was only, in his 30s.
Okay.
And she was 40s at the time. And he wouldn't meet her out for one drink where they had like dollar beers because of the cost. And he even said it to her. Mm-hmm. But like what blows my mind is that like she really had like a lot of conversation with him and had really like let him in the door. Uh-huh. And I think about like how 30 years ago, I don't think that definitely wouldn't have happened, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it would have happened. I think it would have been something where as soon as she discovered that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, potentially, it depends on where they met. If they met in a warm environment or potentially even a cold environment, like I think he probably could have gotten in the door. Mm-hmm. But as soon as she found out that like he didn't have any money or lived at home or whatever it was, then it would have been done.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Like with the warm environment, I just think that they probably wouldn't have ever met in the warm environment. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the guy that you were just talking about. Okay. Right? Like he's not meeting that girl in his warm environment currently. He needs to expand his warm environment.
Yes.
In order to meet a more conservative girl.
Absolutely.
with the whole insecure statement.
Yes. So it's gotten to the point now where women have so many options and choices that they can say, I only want X guy, and X guy is going to mostly be based on looks. And we're talking about just getting in the door right now, but that also extends into the relationship. And so it's something where that's why there's a lot of women out there that easily could be in a relationship, but aren't. And I know we've talked about this offline, a lot of examples of women that we've talked to that aren't in relationships that we know could easily be in relationships.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
because they're attractive and they're nice and they're, intelligent. They check all men's boxes easily. And so again, this is kind of where this kind of ideology coming in. So let's talk about the red pill for a minute and why I'm not a huge believer. Now, I definitely believe in a lot of the tenets of the red pill. So, for example, being confident, that's huge. Like if you can't look someone in the eye and speak to them and have a good conversation with them, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I feel like that is a bucket for every woman, right? She needs to be able to have that in a partner. So if she sees that that's not there right away, like if that's a completely empty bucket, that could eliminate you completely from her options.
Exactly. But see, this is where I end up leaning more towards black pill, is that if you look at all the tenets, so a lot of the tenets of the red pill would say, be confident, have your status going, have your money going, and they're huge gym freaks too. And so I would say that if a guy is short and he's got an ugly face, I don't care how confident he is, I don't care how jacked he is, I don't care if he could be a millionaire. I think in this dating market, the way people are meeting, that guy would be in trouble.
Yeah. I think so too, because I do think that like the red pill ideology, maybe their stuff held true more so 30 years ago.
Yes.
Right? When status and money mattered more to women for survival purposes. I get that. But you're right. And that culture has shifted in today's world, and women don't rely on that as much. I think that women still value it.
Sure.
But it's like, it's just one of the buckets again now.
Yes.
And
but
looks
to me,
do matter.
To me, it's secondary, though. I think it's something where if the guy doesn't pass the looks threshold, just like men do to women, it's the same type of thing. I think it's a pass or fail type of deal. It's one of those things where then a man will get to not want to know a woman's personality, but he's got to be attracted to her.
Yes.
And I think what's happening is it's the exact same thing that's happening with women now to men, is they want to find out all those other boxes that you talk about, but they have to be attracted to him first.
I still think that women have that maybe bin, though. So, like, they have the yes,
the maybe
no,
of all
maybe.
the different Chads.
That's what you think?
Yes.
It's a really wide maybe, and maybe just like one yes is in there, and it could just be anything else.
I think they would pick the best looking guys that they can match with, and then they would say, okay, what does this guy do for a living? What's his personality like? Blah, 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 blah.
They go down the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, where I really believe this, and I'm just using my logic, this isn't really honestly emotional at all, is that I don't really believe that in this day and age, women are going to even want to find that other stuff out if they aren't attracted to him.
Well, I do think that holds a bit more true on dating apps, because I think that attraction is a little bit more complicated for women. But on a dating app, you only have that visual piece, literally. So you're taking away like how somebody smells, somebody's body language, somebody's sound of their voice, how they speak. You're taking away all of those things that I think women do find attraction towards.
Of course.
So I do agree, for the ones meeting on dating apps and that are on dating apps, like it really does, maybe there is more of a yes-no bin. I mean, she literally has to swipe yes or no.
Yes.
Right? So it kind of forces her into that.
Exactly. And if most people are meeting there, and if we look at adults, like most of our audience is male, and they're between, I think it was 25 and 35. And so for the guys we're talking to right now, they're mostly out of college, I would assume. And so that's a warm environment that's gone. a lot of men work in male-dominated professions, whether that's coding, or that's engineering, or that's construction. And so where are the warm environments now to meet women? Bars, right? Bars, clubs, that type of thing. But we both agree that those are terrible places to meet people.
Terrible.
And so and the best place ideally would be some kind of a social circle. But the reality is that I think that there's kind of a lot of guys out there right now that are just not in relationships. So I think a lot of guys are friends with other guys who also don't have relationships. So it's like when I was younger, I had a pretty big friend group. There was about 8 guys. And there was always probably at least half of us that were in a relationship. And so it's one of those things where then they could introduce them to your friends and they could have parties and, people could get together. But it's one of those things where that's not happening a lot because a lot of people aren't in relationships anymore. So a bunch of guys can get together and watch the game or go get a beer at the bar. But at the same time, it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to talk to Joe, who's, Joe's girlfriend. She has a whole group of friends.
Those connections.
Yes.
Yeah.
So people end up turning to online dating apps. And then it's one of those things where everything else we've been talking about kind of takes over.
Yeah. And I think going back to the red pill, I think that the danger is in it, right, is that a man that does have certain characteristics that he can't change that have to do with his looks. So say he's short and bald.
Yeah.
Like if he gets really jacked and he starts succeeding in life,
They
and
have
he
a name
kind of
for
like,
that. Did you know?
What is it? I think you've told me before, but I don't remember.
They're called manlets.
Manless. Okay, so let's say we're talking about one of those. So the danger, I think, there for that man, right, is that he becomes almost like overly confident and he's looking for that 10 out of 10 woman. Because that's what he's been told, is that he can...
I would disagree. I would think that though he even knows he's compensating by getting jacked. But the reality is that he's not going to have he's going to get friend zoned a lot.
Okay. So because I feel like I see the type that I guess does maybe it's just the creators on the red pill atmosphere or manosphere.
Well, they talk a good game, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things where I'd like to see the results. If the guy is 5'6" and he's bald and he's jacked.
Yeah, because sometimes these guys, these creators are talking about women like they're just these brainless things that, will just check off these things that they want and nothing else matters. And they're just another body, essentially. At least pickup artists. I know that there's a wide spectrum within the red pill, but that I think is what also rubs women the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's what I wouldn't want men to fall into.
Yeah, no, I think that it's real, the whole pickup artist is kind of cringy to me.
Yeah.
Because it's using game, and game is to me is just kind of another use of the word manipulation. Do you know what I mean? Which is not healthy.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, they would kind of argue that it's really about showing your confidence, showing your wit, showing your banter, being able to kind of, have these really interesting conversations. But the reality is that if you're just employing game, if that's really not who you are, because some people are super extroverted, and that's, they're called naturals, actually. And those people, that's fine. But if it's something where you have to really, really work on, I think the reality is that you're not going to be able to sustain that.
Yeah.
Because that's just not who you are.
It's not you. Yeah, you're forcing it.
So it's something where it might kind of potentially get you in the door, but I don't think it's going to keep you in the door.
I could see that.
So... But a lot of times these guys don't care about keeping someone in the door. They just care about hookups.
That's what I think is gross. Yeah. That's the side that I don't like. Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree, because I don't think we did a whole episode about hookup culture. I don't agree that I don't think it's a healthy thing for sure.
Yeah.
But it's something that does go on.
Yeah.
But I would even argue that the best pickup artists are also probably the best looking guys.
I could see that, right? So, of course, what they're doing works because they already have their looks as the base.
Yeah. That's why, really, most guys should never really take advice from a Chad
Yeah.
because of the fact that they can be blue pilled. Because you'll see TikToks videos of guys having terrible game, like especially text game, where if they are really attractive, they will get laughs and responses and really positive feedback, even if they're being jerks.
That is so true. Yeah, for a guy to approach a woman, all that matters really is if she's attracted to him.
Yeah. Well,
whatever he says doesn't matter.
What's the difference between, a guy who would be a creep and not a creep at the gym?
Yeah, the creep is the one that she's not attracted to and is looking at her or approaching her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, always been a thing, but now it's a thing that's been more than ever. Because you see, all these TikToks of these creators who film themselves, these female creators, and these guys, that are just glancing at them, and they're labeled as creeps and, all this other stuff. And, that could be really damaging to a guy's reputation.
Absolutely. So what do you think that, like, knowing about the black pill and getting the message out there to men, especially of the dating age, 25 to 35, let's say, is our primary audience, like, what do you think they will benefit from by knowing about the ideology of the black pill?
Well, I think the first thing is getting to the point where you really embrace and understand that that's kind of currently what's going on and accepting that. And it's a really, no pun intended, a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Because it really says that your looks are number one as far as getting in the door. So, the best advice, I mean, there's essentially like kind of 3 black pill advices. And, one of them is geomaxing, which we did an episode on. Another one is looks maxing. So trying to just get to the best of your ability. And then the third one is just accepting the fact that this is probably not a game you're going to be involved in.
Gosh, so those guys would just find interests elsewhere in life, essentially. See, that's like, I guess that's kind of the group it's hardest to think that there's anyone in that category.
There is, though, I believe, in this dating age. Now, again, I'm old enough to remember when people, no matter what their looks were, could find their looks match. And I know some people personally that are really down on that scale and always have been, that are married with kids and families and things like that. I really believe that those days, as of now, are gone. And I think, like, I'm thinking about a couple guys that I know kind of fit that bill. If they were trying, even in their, like, 25-year-old bodies, trying to connect with women right now in this dating meta, I think they would fail miserably. Where 30 years ago, they were okay. Now, even 30 years ago, they were, there was some unattractive women that they were pairing up with. Do you know what again? But it was a looks match type of deal. And I believe that's kind of what ended up happening. But now you're actually seeing the reverse. You're seeing guys who are good looking with women who are unattractive, where it used to be the exact opposite.
I know. We are seeing that more and more. Do you think that there should be more of a push for men to kind of get into a serious relationship a little bit earlier in life? Because I feel like most people, most men and women, have had some sort of relationship at some point in their life.
I don't know. I think you'd be surprised with Gen Z right now. I think there's a lot of guys that have never had relationships. I've counseled women that haven't had relationships either.
That are like how old at that point?
That are college aged.
College age, never had they just participated in hookups?
Yes.
Oh, that's the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, well, that was mostly the women, but the guys, I've met a lot of them that are just being left out in the cold.
Yeah, so they're not participating in either.
No. And so that's where I think, the first thing, to do, obviously, is to level up as much as you can. And, that would include red pill ideology, but black pill ideology, as far as saying to yourself, how can, given my genetics, I can look the best and I can, take the best photos and X, Y, Z to give myself the best chance. But I believe that we really have to knock people over the head with this reality, because if we're living in this blue-pilled world, I think that's why guys are suffering so much from mental health nowadays, is because of the fact that they're getting this messaging that I can just be myself and I can get a woman. But the reality is that if you can't get a woman and you're just being yourself, what does that say about you? That says I'm deficient in some way. And that causes depression, that causes anxiety, and it causes, it can get to the point where people end their lives over this.
I could see that. I could see how the messaging makes that more internal, right? That means that internally I'm not good enough.
Exactly.
And how it would actually be a little bit more easier to handle, right? If it was just about your outward appearance.
Well, I think it's something where you could say to yourself, when it came to my genetics, like this is something I had no control over. I can't control my height. I can't control my, there's my facial structure.
No.
I can't control my age. I can only do the best with what I have, but I really believe that it's something that the roles have been almost reversed, where it's like guys are expected to like all be really good looking, and women are, kind of expected to just be completely okay with looking anyway, and that you're beautiful at any size and things of that nature. And so you're getting these messaging that is completely contrary to each other. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that in a lot of ways, men's mental health is a lot worse nowadays than women's is. What I like to do with this podcast is to really be honest about kind of what's going on and what I feel about this. And, I know that there's a lot of stigma out there, and there's even shadow banning out there. Talking about subjects like the black pill, but it's something that, again, really, I think that this is something that if you just break down logically, makes a lot of sense. And so am I blackpilling you at all, Emily?
You and Wheat Waffles might have influenced me a bit. Because I feel like I had that base belief already, especially in my opinion, that I would talk about of women that had like these high expectations, like they weren't going to accept anything less than, the three things that are, 666. And they're sitting there and they're like unattractive and overweight themselves. And I look at them and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Well, it kind of translates to the black pill ideology. Oh, of course. Right?
Yeah, that is the black pill ideology.
It does and
it's more than just 3 sixes. It's like 5.
Yeah, that's true. So to me, yes, I think I already had some of that base belief of, just reality. And some of these things are not the easiest to hear about. No, and I think that it's still on a spectrum, right? Like I don't agree with anything to the far right or left of that spectrum. I think it does probably lie somewhere in the middle. But I do think that there's good points to be made within the black pill ideology. And I think that there's actually good moves that a man can make based on what he learns from the black pill ideology. First offhand, I think of if our audience is 25 to 35 years old, maybe that means that you should kind of just find a relationship, and you should kind of push towards that after you've looks maxed, and you don't try to continue to find the best woman, and you don't cycle relationships, because at some point then you're older and you might have an even harder time to find somebody that'll match well with you.
Of course.
So I think for those guys, you got to understand that things are not even. Not fair. You can't think, that, well, when I'm 70, I'm going to meet a 70-year-old woman, because apparently the 70-year-old women are on TikTok hooking up with 40-year-old men.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes. So it's saying, if you have, it's being able to look max, but also I would say when it comes to having Instagram or being online, if you're going to be online, profile maxing. that's huge. And
Putting in that effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, and having someone who's a woman, if you have in your life, to help you out with that. Because I think guys, do a lot of things as far as incorrectly when it comes to, kind of that attraction piece. But it's something that I agree. I think if you're, between 25 and 35, you should really try, if this is something that's an interest to you, try to meet somebody that you connect with and get out of the dating market, because the dating market is terrible.
And like we said,
think about like the housing market right now. The housing market is terrible. And so think about the people who actually buy a house or sell a house. Like they do that, right? After there's this huge relief that comes over, because they don't have to, because a lot of times, I'm sure it's gotten better, but you can go and put a bid on a house and there's 10 other bids there. And that's kind of what's going on with the dating market, is that instead of the housing market being inflated, which it is right now, women's egos are inflated.
Yeah.
And so it's like like all these guys are competing for these houses that aren't that great.
I know.
So it's something that I think that for guys, you have to really look at all areas of your life and say to yourself, am I trying to be the best version of myself? And am I putting myself out there in very creative ways if you want to have females in your life?
Yeah, really putting forth that effort.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we'll be really interested to hear from our viewers, their perspective. Guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please hit the subscribe button and watch the next recommended video.